Hi there. Let's go over data tables together. So in today's practice, it's related to the Beaver Dam assignment that we had for our evidence of learning last week. But we're going to dive in and get a little bit more detailed on how to take data from a table or chart and make sense of it to answer our questions. So I'm not going to read all of this to you because I know you can do it, but the short version is that when a beaver builds a dam, it has effects on living and non-living parts of an ecosystem. So the organisms that were living upstream or behind the dam are affected in certain ways. And the data tables here are going to show us how. Data table 1 outlines all of the living things or organisms in this ecosystem. And as we move across, we can see what each organism needs in terms of resources and how these organisms interact with others to live. For example, a moose, the resources that are needed would be marsh plants and terrestrial plants, so for food. And the way that it interacts with other organisms would be by competing for that food. We can see the same type of information for all these other organisms, what they need and how they interact. And that's table 1. Table 2, we're looking at the population over time. So over months and years, we can see how many organisms in a square kilometer are existing for each of these populations. Remember, a population is just the same species of organism living together in the same space. So we have the same organisms in the same order as we did in table 1, but now we're looking at their numbers, how they grow or decline after the dam is built. So let's start here. Lily pads, before and immediately after the dam is constructed, there are none. But over time, we see that there are more and more and more because this number, as we move to the right of the table, increases. We can see a similar trend or pattern with the pumpkin seed fish. There are few, and over time that number grows. Moose, there are few, and over time that number slightly grows. And then we see something different with forest flowers and trees. Before the dam, we have higher numbers, and over time, these numbers begin to decline. So the pattern still exists, but now looks different because trees and small flowers are affected differently. Using these two tables, we can answer our questions on the document. First, what are the resources needed for living things? Well, we know that table 2 only shows populations, but we can see the words resources needed for all of these organisms in table 1. So our answer to question A would simply be the resources needed by all organisms. These details we can copy and paste right here, and that's our answer. This is part of the ways that we use a data table. We find our information, we take it out, and that's our answer. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt. We'll repeat the same process for question B. On the second section, or the second page, we now have to look at these species or these organisms that we have in our tables. We have to figure out how and when were they affected upstream or behind the dam because of the beaver's actions. So here we have a description and an image of these organisms, and we have to figure out what happened first or which organism was affected first. For example, picture 1 shows the dam being constructed, so that's certainly going to be our first action or the first thing that happens. Let's look at the moose population stabilizing or turning into the similar or same number. We know that table 1 is talking about resources and interactions, but here we're looking for numbers. So we're going to use table 2. The moose population slowly grows, eventually, after several years out, stabilizing around 5 moose per square kilometer. So at least 2 years after the dam was constructed, the moose population is stabilizing. That should make us think, because of the changing numbers in other organisms, that the moose population stabilizing will probably happen later on. We can look at the next option, which is a sharp growth in pumpkin seed fish, number 3. Looking at pumpkin seed fish, we can see we have 1, 2, 12, and then suddenly 1 year out, we go from 12 to almost 90. To me, this is a big jump. So the pumpkin seed fish, and between 4 months and 1 year out, has a dramatic change. So that will definitely take place sooner than the moose population stabilizing. Notice what we're doing is we're trying to determine big changes or noticeable changes in these organisms by using the numbers in the chart. Then all we have to do is put these changes in order. This is the process we're going to repeat to organize the organisms here. And then for the remainder of this assignment, all we have to do is explain our thinking. So how did we know what the first organism affected was? How do we know what the second organism to be affected was? We're going to use the data table to give a strong answer. If you have questions, please let us know.